So I was having some issues with my brand new dual Interforce Interceptor gauges, and they were not working right. They would plug in and just have blinking LEDs. And I tried them on my red Cobra and on my red Mach 1, and they did the same thing. So we came to a conclusion it was probably the cable. And so I asked them if they would just mind sending me a new cable, and I'll try that first, and if that didn't work, then I'd send the gauges in. And so they went ahead and sent me another spare cable, and it came, and I was really excited thinking that this was going to be the fix. And if you look at the cable, the wires were actually in different spots. The colors were swapped on the different cables. And so I was thinking, oh, well, this has definitely got to be what the problem is because these wires are crossed. And I asked them about it, and they said, no, the wires don't matter where they are. They're oriented fine. So I plugged it in, and I was really excited. I thought, okay, this is going to be the fix to the problem. And so I cycled the key, and the LEDs blinked a little bit brighter, but they still didn't work, and the face was still dark. The LEDs blinked. They're only supposed to blink for a couple seconds, and then the face is supposed to light up. And so, like I said, I looked at the old harness and the new, and the orientation of the wires, and I asked them about it, and they said, no, don't worry, it's not that. So I sent the gauges and the original harness into them, and they tested it and said, oh yeah, the harness was definitely bad. And so they sent me back another new harness with my gauges back, and I decided to go ahead and plug it in and try it. You can see in shipping it got kind of banged up, although it didn't hurt the gauges at all. So I plugged it in. I was really excited thinking that this was going to be the fix, finally done with this problem, and still no fix. And so I thought, well, it doesn't work in the Mach 1 or the Cobra. Let me go try it in my 98 Cobra. So I went outside, plugged it into the 98 Cobra, and it worked. And I was like, wow, the gauges light up, everything works, so at least I know the gauges work, but how come it's not working in my two newer Mustangs? So I thought maybe it has something to do with the cars being newer, maybe the computers are just a little different or something. And so I asked Danny Johnson if I could come over to his house and try plugging in the OBD2 harness and these gauges into his '04 Cobra, his '03 Mach 1, and even his '01 GT. And so he was nice enough to let me come over and do that, and I went over there and plugged it in, and it worked in all of his cars too. So I thought, well, now it's got to be something with my cars. And my brother had said, hey, why don't you see if the handheld programmer works on your cars? And I said, well, I've turned off a check engine light recently on the Mach 1, so I know that it works. But what I didn't know was that first bad harness, when I tried plugging the gauges into my Cobra and into my red Mach 1, had actually blown the fuses to the OBD2 port power. So that was the problem I was having. That's why the gauges now worked in all the cars except for my two, because this fuse here was blown. This is the one out of the Mach 1, and it powers the OBD2 port. And sure enough, when I went home, I realized that it had blown the fuse in the Cobras as well. So this whole time, it wasn't really the harness. It was the first harness was bad, but the second harness wasn't the issue. It was the fact that the original bad harness had blown the fuse. And so this is what fuse it is. It's number 31, and it powers the OBD2 port. So now I'm really excited to say that when I cycle the key, the LEDs light up for a couple seconds, and the gauges work perfectly. So far, so good. Somebody on the forums, when I asked about this on SVT Performance, had said that sometimes they actually have to push one of the buttons on theirs to get it to light up, and they were wondering if that's what the issue was. And I said, no, see, like right here, I push one of the buttons to get one of them to light up sometimes. But I said, no, they were completely dead before. Like, no matter what sequence I did or how I touched the buttons or anything, those screens would not light up. So that was the fix. It was the OBD2 fuse, and Danny Johnson also made a video about this, and he talks about exactly what that fuse is for. And some people say it also powers a cigarette lighter. I think the one that's in the center console too, or something like that. But anyway, so that was the issue with the gauges. It was a little involved. It was difficult because it was happening on both my cars, so I was wondering why that would be, that it would have to be a problem with the gauges or the harness. And technically that first harness probably blew the fuses in both cars and created problems to diagnose in the future. So I want to thank Danny Johnson for helping me figure this out, and I also want to thank Aeroforce for good customer support. They were really nice to answer my emails and get back to me and send me a harness, and then take the gauges back in and work on them and everything. So I want to thank them for helping me out with that. I was really wondering how this was going to go and see how they were going to act about all this, and they were really nice to do that for me. Anyway, just want to share that little update with the Cobra. Finally, the gauges are working and it's all installed and looks good. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps somebody else if you have this issue.